What's up you guys, this is Coder Gion, welcome back to my channel. In the last video I talked about whether or not you actually need a school degree to become a software engineering, and we came up with the answer that you do not actually need one. But what we did not talk about was how you can actually go out there and get started to learn software engineering without school, which is what I'm going to do in this specific video. So before we get started, I want to give you guys a brief sentence of what is software engineering about. Software engineering is an industry where you get to implement an end-to-end solution for some given business problem. This is a fancy way of saying that you get to wear many hats and do all sorts of crap to come up with a full solution to solve business problem. So let's look at different types of software engineering that you may be interested in, because first thing I think that you need to get to understand is what type of engineering, what type of development you want to do. A lot of people, they associate software engineering with just coding. They think that you're just on a computer writing sites. There's just so much more than that. I wanted to cover most of the different software engineering topics in this video, but I realized that it was becoming a lot of information, so I may split them up. In this video, I'm going to focus on mobile development and web development, because I think that's, for the most part, that's what people have an assumption of what software engineering is about anyways. But I will give you guys some ideas of what the other types are in case you may be interested. So at the very highest level, we have kind of a various topics of software engineering. You got your mobile development, where you develop applications that you get to download from the app stores, which is kind of intuitive and self-explanatory. Then you get your web applications, which is, when you go to your browser and then you type some URL, you get your website. That's your web development. Then you got your desktop development. This is the applications where you double click on your computer, some program comes up and then you get to interact with it. Then you got your a little bit more abstract engineering, like cloud engineering, DevOps engineering, networks engineering, security, and all sorts of other more engineering. All of those have different, their own respective roles. So technically speaking, you can choose just one of them, get really good at them, and then be just fine. You don't have to really touch any other one. Small companies you go for, you will see that you get to wear many hats. So you may be a mobile developer and web developer and database architect and cloud engineer and DevOps engineer, or just about everything, which is really good because you learn so much. But larger companies usually don't do that because their businesses is so much higher that they can't just have one guy doing everything, and they go out and hire developers specifically for web development, specifically for mobile development, specifically for desktop development, and so on and so forth. So let's go a little bit step even below on all these high level topics. So let's look at the mobile development first. In the mobile development, you have kind of two pathways you can take. You can either go native development or you can do cross-platform. So what's the differences between the two? Native development is the development where you're focusing on only one specific mobile, whether it's iOS or Android. Versus the cross-platform is a development where you write one software and it works for all the platforms out there. So intuitively you may ask, why wouldn't I choose cross-platform and why would I go with native? It seems like cross-platform works for everything. Well, there's actually some disadvantages of choosing cross-platform. Whenever you want to do some sort of implementations of features that only exist in one of the OS systems, then you want to do native. Because, for example, if you want to do, let's say, a Apple Pay integration in your software, well, that's Apple Pay's only iOS thing. So you might want to do a native application because a cross-platform application development will not have those features available for you. So generally speaking, if you're just now getting started, probably it's a little too much you might want to care about right now, but just keep in mind that if you're gonna want to dedicate your life on mobile development like iOS development, you might want to learn iOS development versus cross-platform. But if you think that you may kind of go back and forth, then I would go with learning cross-platform because this still gives you room to pick up other options as well. So let's take it a little bit farther down. In your native application, as I mentioned, you got iOS and you got Android. In the iOS development, you're going to be choosing either probably Swift or Objective-C. Swift is a little bit newer option. It's a programming language, so this is probably where you're going to want to start at. And down below, I'll be dropping some links on all these programming languages and where you can get started with that. My recommendation will be Udemy classes. I would definitely recommend getting a couple of classes, just typing in there Swift, getting started with Swift programming language. It's going to give you quite a bit of information, and then you can always go a step higher, go a little bit more advanced classes, start picking up some projects on the side on your own. With Android, you got your Java. Java is a very big language. If you can use Java for mobile development, and specifically on Android, Java is used for web development as well, and many other cases. So if you learn Java, you'll probably be in good shape, although Java is a little bit tougher as well. So if you do want to learn Android development and you are going with a Java approach, same thing I would recommend is just going out there, picking up some Udemy beginner classes. The reason why I keep bringing up Udemy is because they're so cheap. For $5, $7, $10, you can find a pretty good class. If you don't learn a whole lot out of it, well, it wasn't that much investment anyways, so it's pretty good starting point for beginner developers. So if we look over to the Clos platform, you got quite a bit of options there, and as time progresses, there's more and more options coming up. For example, one of the options that I'm going to talk about here is React Native. React in general is a pretty new thing that came up maybe a few years ago. They have their web development option, which is just a React.js, which is really popular in the industry. And React Native is their mobile version of it. So it's a cross-platform application development. You write in your JavaScript, and then it works for both iOS and Android, which is a really good option. It's very trendy, it's very new, so a lot of companies may not be adopted to that. So if you're going for large companies, that's where you want to get your job at. They may not have yet adopted to the something like React just yet. So just keep that in mind, that if you do learn this, you may get targeted with a little bit newer projects, smaller companies, because smaller companies usually just starting with a new project. Large companies may not be quite there just yet, but you never know what future holds. So not to say that you're not going to get jobs with it. It's very popular, very demanding, so you'll probably be still in good shape. But the other big one is that I think is worth mentioning is Xamarin. Xamarin is Microsoft-based, C#-based framework that you can use. It's massive. The support is huge out there, and I'm personally a fan of Microsoft. I'm not going to advertise Microsoft, but I like their products because usually it's more mature product. So with Xamarin, you can probably get jobs much easier than React Native, if I had to guess. And for this option, you probably want to start with learning C#. Kind of same thing with Java on the Android native development. C# is heavily used on the backend, on the web development. So if you learn C#, you're going to be in a really good shape for many different aspects of development. So same thing, I'll drop some links on some Udemy classes you can get started with C#. Get your feet in the water a little bit, start understanding how it works, and then see if you like it. Microsoft does have a lot of certifications. I would say the first thing you want to do is just go the basics. I think Microsoft certification is going to cost you about $200, $300 total to get the certified, versus Udemy classes are like $10. So I would recommend starting with Udemy classes, get yourself familiar with programming language, maybe even try it out a project or two from scratch, just get creative with what you want to develop, and then start with Microsoft certification, because usually I think you get like one shot or two shots, and you have to take 60 days off. I don't remember the exact details. I'll drop the link down below of the certificates I'm talking about so you can research a little bit more. So my point that I'm making is that you can start from very beginner and then advance into a more advanced certificates. So next thing I'm going to talk about is the web development. The web development gets split into two pathways. You got the front end and you got the back end. So what those are is when you go on the website, whatever you see visually, that's the front end. And whenever you click, for example, if you're on Amazon.com and you put an order in, everything that goes on, how it actually ends up at your house, that's all the back-end work. So let's go down the path of the front end. So front-end development has two big concepts. You got your single-page applications, and then you got your multi-page or classic traditional applications. Your multi-page applications usually are rendered by the server themselves, which means server renders them in front end. I know they may not make perfect sense right now, but just know that it's a traditional way of doing things. That's how a lot of applications are done. You got many pages, you write code for specific page. You have a combination of CSS, HTML, JavaScript, and then you got your server-side rendering code as well. On the other hand, you got single page applications. Single page applications are relatively new. It came around maybe a few years ago or maybe even more back, but it's really been trending right now for the past few years. I mentioned React.js native, and React.js is actually where it started from, single page application for web development. So nowadays the big ones that are out there are AngularJS, React.js, and Vue.js. Some of the larger companies are still using things like Knockout.js, which is a little bit weaker in a way. All of those are frameworks, and they all are built on top of usually JavaScript. You may hear TypeScript here and there, which is just some people call it JavaScript on steroids. It's basically JavaScript, just more object-oriented. So technically, whether you want to do single page application or multi-page application, most likely you're going to start with the very first basic, which is HTML. Any front-end development, or even I guess the web development as a large, you want to start with HTML, then you want to learn CSS, then you want to learn JavaScript. Once you learn those, then you want to get more advanced and you want to learn Angular or React or Vue.js, or you want to pick up your expertise. So that's what I meant by you want to start at the lowest level, at the programming language, and then you want to go step higher and then learn different frameworks. If you go out there and then you search Angular developer, there's many roles out there for just specifically Angular. You won't really find JavaScript developer that much. You may, some softwares are still out there, some front-end applications are still heavily poor JavaScript, so you may find few, but nowadays most companies are either looking for just a front-end developer, or they're transitioning into more Angular developer, React developer, just because they're pretty big frameworks, and the business need for just a front-end developer is starting to increase nowadays. So now let's move over to the backend developer. Backend developer is massive. This is where a lot of jobs are. You're probably not going to be interested in being just a backend developer initially, because it kind of seems boring to just write a bunch of logic. When I first started out development, I actually was in love with the front-end development. I wanted to be a front-end developer only. But then I realized that for me, it was too tedious, because just like mobile development, you're kind of chasing down small elements, where the buttons go, where the buttons are positioned, how they're associated with other buttons and things like that. I personally feel like they were just too tedious for me. So I love backend developer, because I get to code more abstract. And what I mean by that is you write logic that serves many purposes. You architect those codes so that it can be inheritable easily. It can work for many different features and so on and so forth. For me, I love it, but it's just kind of like one of those things that you have to try it out on your own to see if it's something that you will actually enjoy. So let's talk a little bit more about the backend development. In the backend development, you have a lot of different frameworks out there. They are all built on different programming languages. I've been mentioning programming languages already on the front end, mobile development, same thing with the backend development. You got kind of your C#, and the framework on top of that is your .NET, ASP.NET applications. Then you got your Python. On top of that, you got your Django or Flask. Then you have your JavaScript, and JavaScript is kind of now starting to bubble up, and you have your Express, which is Node.js, your Ruby, and on top of that, you have your Ruby on Rails, and you have your Java, and on top of that, you have your Spring framework. So all of those are different programming languages, different frameworks. And what is a framework? Framework is just a bundle of features, bundle of implementation abilities, so that you can make your life basically easier. So how do you choose between those? And that's a very, very tough question. Again, you probably want to boil it down to the programming language, whether you want to learn C#, Python, JavaScript, Ruby. How do you choose between those? I think that the best way to go is honestly just kind of try each and one of them. When you go to school, they usually teach you C++ and Java. I went to school, I learned C++ and Java barely from school, and then when I got out, I became a C# developer. So what I would recommend is just write a very small project. Just come up with a very, very small project. Again, I'll drop some Udemy classes on all of those programming languages. And I would spend maybe like 3 hours, 4 hours on each programming language. And once you get through all different ones, you don't have to do all of them, but just pick maybe like, C Sharp. C Sharp is a really big one. Python is incredible. It's very fancy, but I think it's a little bit more advanced. I may be biased because I'm a C Sharp developer, but I think it's a little bit more advanced. I would probably, if for a new developer, I would either choose C Sharp, JavaScript, and Java. Those three are probably the ones that I would test the waters with. But of course, feel free to test the other ones as well. Take a couple of hours of a beginner's classes and then try it out and see which one you kind of grasp the most and the easiest. And as I mentioned, there is so much more software engineering fields out there, and the frameworks and programming languages that I mentioned, those are just few big ones out there. There's many more that I didn't mention out there, especially on the frameworks. It's really hard to boil everything down that's in the software engineering. It would take just hours and hours of video footage to get you guys up to date and probably even confuse you more than you really need to be just because of how much there is out there. So I think what I covered in this video, that's going to be a good starting point for someone that may be out there and doesn't really want to go to school and doesn't really know where to begin. This gives you an idea of what the different fields that you have. I know mainly I covered mobile development and web development in this video. As I mentioned, there is so much. I'm probably going to create a video just on the DevOps engineering. That one is probably one of my favorite fields. I love doing DevOps work. But I think a lot of people, when they talk about software engineering, they don't really think about DevOps. They don't really think about cloud engineering. With software engineering, because you have so many different options, you kind of have to get out there, try one thing. If you feel like you're not liking, then try another thing. If you feel like you're not liking that either, then keep trying, and you will find your niche that you like the most. Or you may realize that, hey, the first thing that I tried was kind of the best out of it. I'm going to go back to it, give it another shot. So you have to kind of play with it a little bit and see where your heart really lands on. So I hope that you guys really got some value out of this video. I will dive into more details in upcoming videos on different fields. So if mobile and web development is not for you, then definitely stay tuned because I'll be covering the other engineering fields as well. If you do have any questions, drop your comments down below. I'll answer any questions that you may have, or you can reach out to me on your Instagram, Coder_Gio. I'll be answering questions there as well. I want to give you guys as much resources as I can to help you get started or become a good software engineer out there. If you're fresh in school, this video is also for you. Before you graduate, you probably want to follow some of these flows that I'm mentioning here. That's going to really help you stand out when you graduate instead of just knowing just C++ and Java, just like every other student out there. So I hope that you learned something out of this video. Be sure to like and subscribe. Stay tuned for more videos coming soon. Thank you everyone for watching and have a good one.